doing. Now I'm going to go through at least two things here, just two things. Could you find the slide that says Noah's, how could all the animals fit on Noah's Ark? I want to do that one. Then we're going to do carbon 14. I'm going to show an example of how you do this, why we can win. So there's one on how could all the animals fit on creatures. That's the one. That's where we want to be. We talked a little bit about this last session, but I'm going to do two, just as an example to show we win. How could all the animals fit on Noah's Ark? My reading. Answering the challenge. How did the animals get to the ark? How big was the ark? And how many animals actually needed to go on the ark? So let's analyze this step by step. How did the animals get to the ark? Well, it's right in the Bible. Of the birds after the kind, of animals after the kind, of every creeping thing on the earth after its kind, two of every kind will come to you. God brings the creatures to the ark. In other words, Noah didn't have to go out on some wild safari to round all these creatures up. God brings them to the ark. So there's part one there. That's not hard. The Bible gives us a straightforward answer. Now, how big was the ark? What does the ark look like up there? Which one is the more true one? 3, yes. Now, what kind are you going to find in Christian bookstores? Any kind but 3. And, I go into a lot of churches and I see the first and second one on the children's church. I'm going to say this, leave it up there. Please leave it up there. Why? Because you're going to use it as a teaching tool. What you're going to do is you're going to show their children this picture. And that's why you got to keep it there. Keep it somewhere so the children can see these pictures. You show them these pictures. Then you go to the Bible and you read the description of the ark. And you read the dimensions. Then you draw that picture. It looks like a big rectangle. Or you can go out and measure it off. And then once you've done that, every time they see one of those pictures, they're going to say, that's not what the Bible teaches. Let's turn it around and use it for something good. So number 1 and number 2 are not what the Bible teaches, but we can train our children to recognize these pictures as false pictures. So keep them around. They're good for teaching. Genesis 6:15, and this is how you should make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Something interesting about those dimensions. That's a 6-to-1 length-to-width ratio. That is the perfect length-to-width ratio for floating. How did Noah know that? We build some of our modern barges on those ratios and dimensions. Perfect to begin with. That's about 1.5 football fields long, 450 feet. So Noah's Ark size, let's look at that. 1.5 football fields long, length-to-width ratio 6-to-1, not designed to go anywhere. Was there anywhere to go? No, the whole earth was covered with water. About 100,000 square feet of floor space. Think about how big your house is and how many houses could fit in there. Equivalent to 522 railroad car volume-wise. Now we're getting down a little more specific. 522, can you imagine waiting for 522 cars to pass you on the railroad tracks before you can go anywhere? Yeah, you'd be getting pretty upset, wouldn't you? How could all the creatures fit on the ark? Number 1, God never said take all the creatures on. It's in the Bible. He never says do that. Only the birds and land-dwelling creatures with the breath of life went on the ark. Only 2 of each kind went on the ark. 7 of certain ones, but 2 of each kind. Sea creatures and insects didn't have to be on the ark. See, insects never get the breath of life. That eliminates about over 95% of all the creatures on this planet right there. You see, we can assume that about 50,000 creatures go on the ark, and that's an upper limit. Most will come out with less than 20,000, but I'm going to give the evolutionists every opportunity here. About 50,000. The average size creature on the ark was only about the size of a small sheep. Because remember, we didn't have to take grandma and grandpa creatures on there. It never says that. Were the dinosaurs on there? Yes, the little ones. Only about 50 to 60 different kinds have we found, so that's not too bad. Now, the average size double-deck railroad car can accommodate about 240 sheep. A train pulling 210 cars could carry 50,400 sheep. So you take 210 times 240, that's where we get our 50. I did that for the math people and the non-math people. Simple multiplication. You know what that means? Out of all those railroad cars, over the 500 railroad cars. 210 were full, 312 empty. There for Noah's Ark and his family and luggage. See, it's a pretty easy answer once you see it. Once you do your study, you know what 2 Timothy 2:15 says? Study to show ourselves approved, rightly handling or dividing the word of God. We're to study God's word. You know, when you study it and look up in the Strong's Concordance, the meanings of these words, the Bible comes alive, really comes alive. Remember we talked about how could the first 3 days be world days without the sun? We talked about the definition of day as rotation of the earth once on its axis. So where'd the light come from? You know, on day one, God created light. Created light. But here's the interesting thing. You look up the word light in the Hebrew, it's or, O-W-R. You know what that word means in the Hebrew? Luminescence. It means there's light, but it doesn't say anything about a light source. Nothing about a light source. God just created light. He didn't need anything else. And folks, if he can create everything out of nothing, he can create light and doesn't need a light source, does he? He created light. But on day 4, when he creates the sun, it's a different word for light. See, we read it as light and light, both verses, but they're different Hebrew words. This is when the Bible comes alive, when you train your people how to read and study the Bible on their own. One of the best courses you can do anywhere, church. The word is ma'or. You know what that word means? A luminary. It means there's a light source out there providing the light now, called the sun. Isn't that amazing? What was the light? We don't know. But we do know we don't need the sun and the stars for light. There's many forms of light on the spectrum, such as electromagnetic waves. Nuclear explosions cause light. There's many forms of light. We don't know what the light is. You know, some places we just have to accept things by faith, don't we? Hebrews 11:6, without faith it's impossible to please God. But you know what? The evolutionists, their whole model must ultimately be accepted by faith. I do a talk called 4 Power Questions. The evolutionists cannot answer any of these questions, which means their whole model is based on faith. So let's look at this. Conclusion, plenty of room for all the creatures, for Noah and his family. See, when you do this, it comes alive. And it starts to build that confidence in your evangelism methods. Because now you can have answers if you're challenged. But the Bible says there's going to be scoffers. Knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days walking according to their own lust and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. For this they willfully forget that by the word of God the heavens were of old and the earth standing out of water and in water, in which the world that then existed perished, being flooded with water. The New Testament says what? There was a worldwide flood, doesn't it? What does it also say? People are going to ignore this. You know where a lot of those people are coming from? Our churches, our Christian professors in the universities who don't believe in a worldwide flood because they've been influenced by the world. Christian universities, some of them can be just as dangerous as the public universities. Now, carbon-14, it's an atom. It's an atom. There's different kinds of carbon. I can actually do that without this. We can have pictures. We don't need pictures. I'll do you know what PowerPoint really is? It's nothing more than what? Italian gestures. Italian gestures, that's what it is, Italian PowerPoint. So I want to do carbon-14. Now, there's carbon-12, there's carbon-13, there's carbon-14. They all occur naturally. We can make other kinds, but those are the 3 naturally occurring types of carbon. Now, we only want to talk about carbon-14. Now, when we talk about atoms, anybody know the 3 subatomic particles inside an atom? Okay. Right, both those sides. That side didn't give me any information. Yeah, these 2 sides got it almost same. Protons, neutrons, and electrons. We don't even know that much. I'm going to make this so easy that when I get done, you're going to run out of here and buy a physics book. This is going to be very easy. Thank you for getting that up. So carbon-14. We're also often told that proves the earth is older than 6,000 years. No, it doesn't. I'm going to show you carbon-14 is our friend and the enemy of evolution. So I've been to the labs. I know what really happens there. I've written chapters on it. In the Red Answers book out there, I wrote a whole chapter on carbon-14. And I read through all the radiocarbon journals the evolutionists put out. You know what that is? That's called a real snoozer, folks. That'll put you to sleep no matter what you do. Okay, carbon-14, carbon-12, 13, and 14. Protons, neutrons, electrons. Now, protons and neutrons are what make up the nucleus. Now, let me show you what this means here. Got protons, neutrons, electrons. Protons and neutrons basically make up the weight of the atom. Electrons has so little mass we don't even count it in there. Now, here's how you tell one element from another. How you can determine elements. It's by the number of protons in that atom, determine the kind of atom it is. For example, you see up there, all carbon atoms have 6 protons. All nitrogen atoms have 7 protons. All oxygen atoms have 8 protons. That's how you tell the difference. So, wasn't chemistry easy there? See, now you're ready for chemistry. So you learn all, you got some Hebrew language, you got some physics, you got chemistry tonight. We even had a little biology in there. You're ready to go to school now, aren't you? Okay. Let's look at it. Only talk about carbon-14. Okay. We're going to spend a little time on this slide. Now, carbon-14 is not natural to our atmosphere. Does anybody know the 2 most prominent gases in our atmosphere? Nitrogen. That side has come alive, folks. Nitrogen. Anybody know the other one? We breathe it all the time. Starts with an O. Oxygen. Nitrogen and oxygen. 2 most prominent gases. Now, carbon-14 is not natural to the atmosphere. Here's what happens. We get these things, tiny little energized particles called cosmic rays that come down and bombard our upper atmosphere. They come down with tremendous force and intensity, just blow an atom apart. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, but the end result is this. Some of the nitrogen atoms in the atmosphere get changed into carbon-14 atoms. What it is, it's a proton-neutron change that occurs in there. So some of the nitrogen gets converted into carbon-14. Now, carbon likes to combine with oxygen. When we combine carbon and oxygen, what do we get? I can see it right there. I can see the sine waves coming out of her brain, and she was saying carbon dioxide, weren't you? That's what, see, I knew you knew that. You know a lot about physics, don't you? It's your favorite subject now, isn't it? Okay, I'm not getting much response there. Just a smile. It's a good smile, too. So we get carbon dioxide out there. Plants take in carbon dioxide. We eat it and we breathe it. So we all have carbon-14 in us because we eat it and we breathe it. Now, I have a question. Anybody want to answer it? Well, what's the question? That's not how I work tonight, folks. I need a volunteer to answer this question. Thank you. Right there, you moved. Yes. See, in the military, if you move, you volunteered. I'm going to show you that the rest of you wished you would have volunteered because this lady knows this answer. When we die, do we continue to eat or breathe? No. See, aren't you glad you volunteered now? No, we don't. Now, what does that mean? What that means is this, that while we're living, we continue to take carbon-14 in by eating and breathing. But once we're dead, we no longer eat and breathe, so we're not taking any carbon-14 in. But carbon-14 is something about it. It's an unstable atom. I just said something very profound there. Carbon-14 is unstable. You have carbon-14 in you. What does that make you? Unstable, yes. See, now you have a reason for acting the way you do. It's your carbon-14 that's making you do all these things. Now, how many are starting to like physics? Yes, yes. I love science. See, as creationists, we have all the freedom to teach the real science. It can be fun. Evolutionists can't have that much fun with it because they can't tell the truth. Isn't that great? So what we mean by unstable is this. This might really scare you. It's radioactive. Anybody glowing at night? Don't worry about it. You got very little of this in you. Very little, but we have it in us. So what we mean by unstable or radioactive is that over a period of time, it changes back into a nitrogen atom. It's called radioactive decay. So the full life cycle, start with some nitrogen atoms. Some of those get changed into carbon-14. Then over a period of time, they change back into nitrogen where they started. Now, how long does it take that to happen? Well, anybody heard of a half-life? How long it takes half of something to decay? Well, the half-life of carbon-14 is about 5,730 years. Now, don't think these scientists sit there and look at these atoms for 5,730 years. Here's what we do. We take a sample population of carbon-14 atoms, see how long it takes some of it to decay. We run that experiment over and over and over again, you get a very consistent answer. Then we extrapolate it back. How long would it take half of it to decay? So that's how we get to 5,730 years. And we believe we're pretty accurate on that one. So half-life, 5,730 years. Now, carbon-14, we have it in us. We estimate that once we die, I have another question. We know when we're dead, we no longer eat or breathe. I'll be nice. I won't ask the second question. We don't eat or breathe. Once we're dead, carbon-14 continues to decay out, but we're not taking it in. And we estimate after about 80,000 years, all the carbon-14 that was in us is all gone. About 80 to 100,000 years should be no carbon-14 left in us. So if we were to find a fossil and it contained no carbon-14 in it, what could we assume? It's older than 80,000 years. Well, if we found a fossil and it still contained carbon-14, what could we assume? It's younger than 80,000 years. Pretty simple there. Okay. Now, coal. Let's talk about coal. Coal is organic. Incidentally, we can only use carbon-14 for once living things. Can't use carbon-14 for dating rocks, only once living things, called organic material. And coal is organic. It comes from something that was once living. Now, coal, according to the evolutionists, is tens of millions of years old. Should it have any carbon-14 in it? Absolutely not. A group of research scientists took coal samples from around the country, took them to one of the best evolutionist dating labs. We let them do this. It said, tell us what you find in this coal. You know what we found in every sample of coal? Carbon-14. What does that tell us about the age of coal? It's younger than 80,000 years. It's got to be a lot younger than that. See, you won't see this in any of your textbooks. Why? Because this is observable, repeatable science, and that is not allowed in the textbooks. They would rather teach evolution than science today. But they didn't stop there. Diamonds. Now, diamonds are a very special kind of stone because diamonds are made up, I'm going to really ruin this for you. Diamonds are made up of pure carbon, carbon 12, 13, and 14. Now, diamonds are supposed to be up to billions of years old. Incidentally, we can make better diamonds in one day than we find in nature. So think about that. They're pretty common, really. You got to get something better than that. Just trying to cause a little conflict here. Yeah, pure carbon. Those be hundreds of millions to billions of years old. Same group got diamond samples, took them to the lab. Guess what they found in every diamond sample? Carbon-14. What does that tell you? They're really not that old at all, are they? Just thousands, not millions or billions. You see, we have the observable evidence, but the observable evidence doesn't matter when it comes to evolution. All that matters is we teach evolution. Are you seeing what's happening in our schools? Our youth are being held captive and not allowed to learn real, true science anymore. But it doesn't stop there. When did the dinosaurs die out, according to the evolutionists? 65 million years ago. Should they contain any carbon-14? Not at all. You know what we've been finding in dinosaur bones all over the world? Unfossilized dinosaur bones. I have some at home. They're still bone. They're not fossilized. We're finding soft tissue on dinosaurs in the bones. You can take this tissue and stretch it, it comes back together again. That's amazing. We're finding on many dinosaurs. We're finding proteins in dinosaur bones. You know what happens when you die? Protein comes apart right away. We're finding red blood cells in the dinosaur bones. We're finding DNA in the dinosaur bones. Don't think we're going to clone anything, folks. It's not like that movie, Hollywood movie there. But we're finding fragments of DNA. You know what? DNA has a half-life of 521 years. In other words, every 521 years, half the DNA is decomposed. After about 10,000 years, should be no DNA there. And here's what else we've been finding now. Dinosaur bones all over the world. Carbon-14. A lot of carbon-14 in there. What is the evolutionist response? Oh, contamination, contamination. Can't be, folks, because the carbon-14 in there was due to contamination. We should find different amounts of carbon-14 in these bones all over the world, but we don't. We find consistent levels of carbon-14. You know what that means? They all died at about the same time. What would do that all over the world? A flood, yes, a flood. You see, the data matches the Bible. It always will. because God's the creator of all things. Any one of these discredits evolution. But take a look at all these combined, folks. We win. But we don't win because we haven't trained ourselves. I can take multiple subjects like this and keep going and going and going and teach and get our youth trained. But I can't reach as many as youth pastors will or Christian school teachers because you have them for a whole year. Think after a year of teaching, it's not the only thing you want to teach. There's other things you want to teach, and they're very important, valuable. But when we spend time on this, it makes a difference in their lives. It'll take that over 60% way down. These are the things we need to be able to do. So again, we have resources out there. Get some. Our DVDs that we have on our table are $5 a piece. If you don't have $5, $2 will do. $3 will do. $1 will do. We have 2 books out there. One called Discerning Truth. It's a powerful book. I like it. One of the reasons I like it, it's very thin. See, I like thin books with color pictures. This one doesn't have any pictures in it. But this book talks all about and shows examples of the logical fallacies that evolutionists use and how to respond to them. Powerful book for training. Then we have another book out there called The Answers Book. It's a red one. It's a thin answers book. It goes into a lot of questions and how to answer them. Gives some good detailed answers in there for the layperson to understand. And then your local ministry, they have many other answers books out there and DVDs for you. So there's a lot of information out there. Don't buy them just to buy them to use them. See, those answers books from Answers in Genesis your local ministry has here, they are excellent for Sunday school because you don't have to read sequentially. There's a question, and each answer is about 10 pages long, and they're written for the layperson. Excellent for Sunday school. You pick 1 or 2 every Sunday school class. By the end, you've got some pretty good, knowledgeable people in there. And don't just leave it. I covered this one last week. Bring it back again. Keep repeating. See, repetition is good. Don't stop with one iteration. Keep it in front of them so they can answer it. Then 1 week, challenge somebody, see if they have the answer. Let's be doers of the word out there. So there's some good resources out there. You got a local ministry here that can help you. So those are the 2 I really wanted to go over. How could Noah fit all the creatures on the ark? And carbon-14 to show you we have the science on our side. We have it. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for your opportunity to ask questions. And remember, this front row was pretty good, so all the questions go to them. Yes, you missed that, didn't you? No. Do you have any questions on any of this? Yes. I'll bring it to you. Don't, I said, that ruins my reputation. I'm supposed to be mean.
Okay, delete that comment.
Okay.
On a previous slide, you had 3 points on critical thinking skills. So what were they?
How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? Okay. Okay. Who's got number 1? How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? Every time I go to a junior high or high school class, this is what I teach. It's a whole session on critical thinking skills. I answer those 3. Then we go to a power question that just demolishes evolutionists. Then I go to another critical thinking question. We go through those. Then I show some examples of things called fuzzy words and magic words that evolutionists use all the time. So it's a whole thing on critical thinking that teaches you how to read between the lines, hold the evolutionists accountable for the words they use. You don't have to give any answers. In other words, I train you how to turn the situation around from being on the defense to being on the offense, to see if they have answers for what they believe, and a lot of times they don't. I train you how to catch the big bluff. So valuable course there that we teach. Yes?
Okay, you're talking about the carbon-14 and the coal and taking it to the different labs, but I remember looking at textbooks where it said you go through lower layers of the Earth's crust, and then you have different levels or readings of the carbon-14 until they would date it older and older and older.
Not on carbon-14. Not so
something.
much on carbon-14.
So then what were they using to date it?
Oh, what they're using to date the layers, and I've got this quotes from the U.S. Geologic Survey and another meeting they had in 2012 by top leaders in geology around the world, that the main thing they use to determine the different ages of the layers is the fossils they find in the layers. It's called biostratification, if you want a big word. See, I use big words because it makes me look smart because I can pronounce them. Don't have to know anything about them, but I can pronounce them. By the fossils they find in there. But you know what we have found out? These fossils that are supposed to be index fossils, supposed to only lived in one time period, we find them scattered all through the fossil record, all through the different layers. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The fossil record demolishes. Now, dinosaurs are supposed to have died out 65 million years ago. How do we know that? Because of the rocks we find them in. That can't be true because we found out now from observable evidence and repeatable dinosaurs have been dead that long. So how can we date the rocks as 65 million years ago based on the dinosaurs? We can't. They're only thousands of years old at the most. The whole thing falls apart. And we find them all mixed around, different orders. Only find them in textbooks that way, in that order. Be careful of deception. Well, see, one of the critical thinking questions I want students to remember is this one. When they see a picture of a fossil in the textbook, how much of the fossil was actually found and how much was drawn in by the artist? Because what we're seeing in the textbooks are a lot of pictures drawn by artists. We only found a little bit of the fossil. It is deception out there. It's warfare, folks, against Christianity and the Bible. We know we win in the end. But in the meantime, let's make sure our youth don't leave the church. Thank you for those questions.
For anyone who may have believed the gap theory, when in all this did Adam, or rather did Satan fall, and what was the time frame before, at the time of creation and probably the time that Adam and Eve fell, were deceived and fell? What is the time frame, or is it known or not known?
Okay, during the gap theory, when did Satan fall? Do we know when he fell? We can't be real precise on it, but the gap theory is not a biblical concept at all and doesn't work scientifically. The gap theory says between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, there's a large gap of time, millions and millions of years. And there's many different versions of this gap theory. The most popular one is that's when Satan came down and destroyed everything, sometimes called Satan's flood. There's a lot of different explanations, but something happened in that large gap of time so we can have millions of years of time. Well, you can't have that because the language won't allow for it. And gap theorists misuse many parts of the Hebrew language. They just abuse the language to get their gap. And remember the gap theory, millions of years, what does it imply? Death before sin. And think of this, Genesis 1:31, God would have called all those dead things very good. So let's go out and shoot all the animals. See, it's a different God, changes his character. When did Satan fall? Well, it had to be after Genesis 1:31 because Satan is a created being. God called his creation perfect, very good in Genesis 1:31. And he had to fall somewhere in there. It had to be before Adam and Eve conceived Cain. Because Cain was conceived in what? With the sin nature. How long was that? We don't know. Could have been days, weeks, months, maybe a few years. But that's the time frame somewhere in there. It happened. Yeah, right. Before Adam and Eve were actually, because Cain was born with a sin nature, so it had to be somewhere in between there. Yeah, before Adam and Eve, right, because he came down there and he was already evil when he deceived Eve. Wasn't that interesting? Came to Adam, and what did Adam's response do when God was looking for him? He really knew where they were. What did Adam say? God, it's not my fault. It's that woman you gave me. Yes. Now, what did Eve do? God, it's not my fault. It's that serpent you made. You know what? We're still doing the same thing today. When I was in the Garden of Eden, here's what it basically says. Satan comes down and says, that's not what God really meant. I'm going to tell you what he meant. I see that happening in our Christian universities today. Professors, that's not what God really meant in Genesis 1. I've got the degrees. Let me tell you what he really meant. Wow. Satan's alive and well in our Christian universities. Okay. So that answer your question? We can't know for sure because we don't have enough information. Yes.
If we go through the 4 power questions.
Okay, briefly go through the 4 power questions. Okay, number 1, where did the matter come from to create the universe? I'm not talking about the Big Bang. Big Bang's not an answer. You have to have something to go bang before you have something that can go bang. Where did the matter come from? They cannot answer that. Most all of them say, well, the Big Bang. No, that's not the answer. I want to know where the mass came from to create that Big Bang. And here's the problem. Something cannot create itself. I know they'll come out there and say, oh, quantum physics. How many quantum physicists do I have here? You don't know what you're missing. Quantum physics. Oh, we have these fluctuations that occur. And every once in a while, something pops into existence and goes away. Baloney, folks. That's pure baloney. It's misinterpretation of what's happening out there. For something to create itself, it means it has to have energy to do this. Where did the energy come from? See, a quantum fluctuation requires energy. And I've been in upper level physics classes teaching this, and they'll go to this quantum fluctuation, which is nothing more than magic. And I say, in order to have that particle come into existence, it requires energy. You're not allowed to have energy. You got nothing. Or they'll use other kinds of excuses. Here's something we don't think about. In order for something to pop itself into existence, it has to have space to pop into existence. You don't have any space yet. So something cannot create itself. That's good logic and science. So now they'll go to this one. The universe has always existed. It's always been there. Baloney, folks, because that goes against one of our known laws of science. Something called, we won't go into a big explanation of it, second law of thermodynamics. It prohibits the universe from being infinitely old. Unless you don't want to believe in science, it's creationist, I do. So power question number 1, where did the matter come from? The only explanation is, in the beginning, God created. That does not violate any known laws of science. Power question number 2, how did life originate? We can't even get a single protein, not even a small one. The best we can do is simulate death. We can't create life. See, a protein's not alive. It's not even close to it. You got to get the first cell. We can't even get a small protein. So we don't have to talk about DNA and all the other things. So it's over right there. I've done that talk in front of NASA scientists twice, and they lose twice. Third question, where'd the dinosaurs come from? We talked a little about that. Every example they put up there, and there are very few for transitions, already looks like a dinosaur. And in my talk I have a talk on this. I show the pictures they put up for transitions. Every one looks like a dinosaur already. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the transitions. They don't have any. I even have a quote from the Smithsonian Institute saying we can't find any transitions. They're not a Christian organization. Another question is, the power question. Sometimes we use the power question. Show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. Think about that one. Show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. 2 key words. I'm demanding observational evidence, or you're asking me to believe by faith. Anybody ever observed the Big Bang? Nope. Anybody ever observe a star form? Nope. Then they won't form by natural processes, and I know what the textbooks say. But no one's ever observed a star, and based on the principles of physics, stars will not form by themselves. Anybody ever observe life originate by naturalistic processes? No. Anybody ever observe one creature change into a brand new creature? No, they have not. Anybody ever observed millions of years forming a canyon? No, they haven't, but we've observed them happening in a matter of days. See, we go through all of that. What have we observed? Let me tell you what we observe. Bacteria produce bacteria. Monkeys produce monkeys. Elephants produce elephants. What are we saying? The observational evidence supports exactly what the Bible teaches. Everything was created after its kind and produces after its kind. That's observational evidence. Everything else is based on conjecture. See, the fossil record doesn't support evolution at all. And there's another one I do on the fossil record. But those are my basic 4 that I use. And what we do is we go through that in a lot more detail. And it's not hard science. I've taught this to 6th graders, and they can understand all this. We need to get to our junior hires, especially on the origin of life, before they get to high school, and train them on this. Then we'll prevent some of this 60% right there. Thank you for that one. You get extra credit for that one. That's because your wife told you to ask it, didn't she? So you get the credit. Yeah, apologetics is a fun thing. When I do students, and sometimes I'll go to, and I'll just be there to answer questions. Sometimes those will last for 3 hours, as long as you have pizza there, right? You know, they'll spend 3 hours asking questions, and they just come alive. See, one of the things I do is called fireside chat. I come to homes or churches, and we all sit down, including me, and you just fire off your questions. For hours, we'll do that, and I'll just answer questions. As long as you feed me homemade cookies baked 8.5 minutes, I'm there. So, any other final questions? Got one there, and we have one in the back.
I actually love apologetics. I've gotten myself into trouble just because I've been really passionate about it and not really conceited at all. But one of the things that I don't want to say I've had trouble on, but I guess I have a question. How do you approach the difference between microevolution and macroevolution? Because whenever I start going into apologetics, the instant that I do that, they start beginning to use macroevolution to prove microevolution.
Okay.
And I have to back up the bus, and it takes even more time. And at that point, they're just too frustrated to even know the difference between those two things. So do you have a shortcut to segue into that, or do you just say outright reject it? Or
No, it comes up occasionally. First of all, we don't like the word microevolution. I don't use it anywhere because there's no such thing. But they will use it, and they're taught it still, so we have to be able to defend against this. Microevolution is small, gradual changes. Then they assume if we have enough small, gradual changes, it'll turn into macroevolution, where one kind turns into a completely new kind, such as a dinosaur becoming a bird. That's what they do teach in the schools. Dinosaur became birds. So they're still living out there, just called birds. So how do I approach it? Well, the only time I use the word micro is if I need to quote them. And they say, what do you believe about this? Well, I do believe in what you called microevolution, because it's really not evolution. It's really a variety within kind. We do see that all the time. Creatures can vary in kind. In other words, look at people. We have short people, taller people, all different shades of skin color, but we're all people. We have many different types of dogs out there, but they're all the dog kind. So we have variety within kind. So I do accept that. But I do not accept macroevolution because it's never been observed. Right. And I'll ask them for an example, an observational answer, or it's faith. I'll go there with that. But if they want to continue on, I'm going to ask a power question. Can you show me any observational evidence where that vast amount of information in our DNA came from? The only answer they can give me on that is over millions of years. Did anybody ever observe millions of years? No. And I'm going to go after them on their mechanism called natural selection and mutations. Anybody here want a mutation? Why not? Because most all known mutations are detrimental or neutral. There's very few, if any, beneficial mutations, and none of those beneficial mutations ever added genetic information, none of them. Yes, in comic books they do. But I'm going to tear apart. I just did this on a debate with two atheists. They made the mistake. They mentioned natural selection. And I went after them, natural selection. Because natural selection, I'm going to just go into this real quickly, does not exist. Nothing ever gets selected, folks. And I went after it, and I said, give me a definition of natural selection that shows evolution. For a half hour, they could not do that. They came up with all kinds of crazy answers, but not one of them benefited them. Then I told them what's really happening there. Whole new field of genetics, folks. Nothing ever gets selected. You see, that's taking away the power, that's taking away glory to God when you believe in natural selection. You see, what it is God's already pre-programmed all the information in our DNA to allow us to adjust to different situations. We can adjust to hot, we can adjust to cold, we can adjust to high altitude. It's already programmed in there. And then there's a whole new field called epigenetics that just destroys the evolutionist. And this is a big growing field. So yes, I'll go after them on that. But first, I'm going to keep it very simple. Accept micro, but it's really not evolution. Then I say I can't accept macro because no observational evidence. So we had one more. We'll do the last one. You had a question. You just changed position, trying to confuse me.
I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this.
That's good. Now I have an out.
Okay. How do you deal with a child that's already been in college or going to college and high school and they don't believe anymore?
Okay. This is a very common question, and you get the question of the day right there. It is very important. How do you deal with a child. I know many Christians have had to deal with this, many top-level Christians. They send their children off to college, and they don't want to talk to their parents anymore because they don't believe. How do you deal with that? I'll give you the number one answer. The number one answer. Be on your knees and praying. I've heard too many stories of Christians who lost their children, and 30 years later, they called up and say, I've accepted the Lord. It's going to take a long time sometimes it'll be short. God answers prayers. Pray for your children always, folks. Don't ever stop. That's the number one answer. Number two, don't shun them. You're there as unconditional love for them. And if they don't want to talk about it, you don't bring it up. If they bring it up a little bit, you can talk softly about it. Just you can ask them some little questions, how to understand what they're believing better. Don't attack them. You're there as the parent. Unconditional love. No matter what they've done, you still have that love for them. Yes, they may have to pay penalties sometimes for what they've done, but you're there to love them no matter what. So number one answer is prayer, folks. I've seen it work. It's hard. It can be very personal too. It is. But yes, that is the answer. I've talked to many Christians, and I know some of these Christians are top leaders in Christianity, have lost their children. Satan is alive and well and is trying to do whatever he can to stop this. Let's get on our knees and pray. That's a big part of this whole thing. I talked about we have answers, but you know, even more powerful than that is we need to be a church and a nation in prayer. You look at the history, Israel, when they got on their knees and prayed, things happened. Don't forget that. So that would be my answer for it. In the meantime, trust God. Don't ever lose confidence. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. This is my favorite thing in the world to do. It's more fun than computers. Let's go out there and get this next generation prepared. If you want to know more about this, we have a website called creationtraining.org, all one word, creationtraining.org. We love to come to places and do teaching. My favorite thing to do is teaching, so when I leave, somebody else can teach it and take it over. We want youth pastors. Don't forget the position you're in as youth pastors. You're such a valuable position. You Christian school teachers, Sunday school teachers, we need to have you.